Hi, so today I'm going to be talking about something that we hear very often. Whenever group owners are thinking about acquiring new practices or adding more locations to their group, the first thing that comes to their mind is that in order to improve their revenue and their EBITDA margins, they need to add more patients to their practice. And the only way they believe that's possible is through adding more marketing dollars, right? And also, they think that in order to improve their revenue margins or their EBITDA margins, they need to do like massive cost cutting projects. Now, what happens is that when you're reducing your operational costs without looking at your data, without looking at where the leakages are or where you need to align your throughput to the demand that's coming in, what happens is that many times you're putting your effort into cutting those operations that actually have a massive impact on improving the patient care for the patients who are willing to come to your practice. So the thing to consider here is that it's a dream for many to increase their marketing spend from ten to $20,000, maybe $30,000, maybe 4 to 5 grand or more. And they think that this is going to be directly correlated to getting more patients and increasing the EBITDA margin, but that is not true. So a lot of times when people hear, and the reason for this kind of a thinking behind group owners is because we see so many marketing gurus, so many people talking about how marketing can magically bring in better dollars to your practice. Now, marketing is not a magic. There's a lot that goes behind the marketing dollars that is needed to build a business and make it scale. And that is what I'm going to be talking about today. So what happens is that when you're adding or hiring new agencies, and there are a couple of groups that have like multiple agencies on board. They have people working on their organic ranking so that they are on the top of the list in their region for general dentistry or even for cosmetic cases. And then they have a lot of people who are working on the paid funnels. And then because when those marketing dollars don't directly convert, you're sold the dream that you're spending 5 grand and it's automatically going to give you like 10 times increase on your EBITDA. And when that doesn't happen, the reality hits. They see that the 5 grand did not convert into like $5 million overnight. And it was never going to happen, because when you see those adverts for cost cutting measures and digitization and getting like artificial intelligence into your practice, nobody talks about the other things that you need to align in order to make sure that your throughput and your yield are getting the kind of boost that is needed to improve patient experience and get you the kind of return that you're looking for on your EBITDA for your entire group. Not just one location, not two locations, but across every location in the same range, right? So a variance is what kills a group's growth. And when a group owners see that it's not translating into the kind of results that they were hoping for, marketing did not, just switching on a campaign did not get them the kind of patients and the kind of cases that they were hoping for, and the cases did not eventually convert, then they look at other gurus. They go on to get courses on case acceptance. They go on to get CE courses on improving their preps and improving their surgical precision and improving their communications. And the thing is, and also a lot of times they think that it's maybe the campaign, it's the offer. They need to they look at their competitors and they get in the rat race of offering discounts. Who's going to give a better bargain on the procedure, even if it's going to eventually impact your profit margins or your EBITDA margins. Because let's face it, if you're a PPO provider and if you're not an out of a network provider, then the insurance reimbursements have significantly reduced over the last years, and that has really impacted the cost of dentistry and the profit margins that a lot of practice owners are seeing. And that is why we are seeing so many models where dental practices are basically looking into having shared practice models, right? DSOs, other kinds of private shared models where they have a centralized operating management system, because consistency scales. So what happens is that when the reality of adding more marketing dollars does not convert into more patients and more revenue, they look at what's happening online. When they're scrolling their screens at night and they see doctors dancing on TikTok and there's a $2,500 implant case offer, or just 50% off on a veneer. They think that they have to, that's what's getting people through the door. They think that that is what is attracting. But the thing is, when you get in the price wars, you're not attracting your ideal patient. You're just attracting people who are in it for, they're not the kind of patients that you're looking for, because the people who are chasing, who are price shoppers, or who are getting, looking for better discounts, when you get in the price wars, you're attracting patients who may not be a good fit for the kind of model that you're looking for. So they're not going to help you with your EBITDA margins. It's always going to be volume over value. So you have to be careful about that. And then what happens is that the first and foremost thing, the realization is that, many times the owners get into a panic mode. They're like, what do we do now? I mean, we did everything that was out there in the playbooks online. The gurus were teaching it, but what happens is that you need to understand where your practice needs adjustments, right? Every group is unique, but one thing that stays common is that your operations across your entire group, across every location, have to be the same. They have to remain consistent. You cannot afford variance across your own locations, but you cannot keep competing with every other group that's next door, because you have to maintain your uniqueness. So once you've identified exactly the kind of patients, the kind of procedure mix that you're after, that is when the real game starts. This is what the reality is. When you're pumping dollars into your group, you are just adding more leads. And unless and until you look at where the funnel is leaking, you're just going to keep pumping money. And the more money you're pumping, the more pressure is putting on the bottom of your funnel, of your structure, of your groups, of across different practices. Because if your group is not structured to handle the kind of volume that's coming through, because of the operational cuts and because of the marketing ad spend increases, then this is just a recipe for disaster. It's going to take you a couple of months to a couple of years until your system collapses, because by the time you realize that the problem was never your operations, the problem was never the marketing spend, the problem was never your providers, the problem was never your the equipment that you have. The problem was always consistency across every location. Operational consistency matters the most, and by the time you realize that, it may be too big to handle, because when you add multiple locations, the magnitude of the problems and the leaks, it just amplifies. And when it amplifies and it gets out of proportion, it's like, and this is the mistake a lot of dental group owners make. They try to tackle the issue after they have faced it, right? After it's out of hands, after it's right in their face. So what happens is that when you are looking at, when you're building, when you think about starting a group, or when you think about scaling your group, you have to start by making a structure that gives you the kind of data that is needed to make sure that you have a scalable group. Because growth does not stop at getting more patients through the door. Growth actually starts when you have multiple locations and you have actually the kind of EBITDA, because once you have better margins through a better production per operatory per day sequence, then that is when you start having the kind of finances you need to scale beyond 5, 10, 15, 20, or even more locations. So operational consistency matters, and operational consistency gives you the points that are needed for you and by your team in order to analyze where the leaks are happening. So this image is going to give you a big reality check, because in my research, when I studied thousands of practices that scaled over the last couple of years, I saw that when you're adding more marketing and you're adding more leads to your funnel, you are addressing the top of the funnel problem, because people think that just getting a lot of people through the door is going to get them is going to get them the kind of margins they're trying to hit. But the reality is that if those people are not converting into case acceptances, and those case acceptances are eventually not converting into case completed and then collections, then that ad spend is not translating into the revenue numbers that you're trying to hit. So these are the four leaks. One number, the most common point of leakage, and that this has been reported by Dental Economics and ADS research papers as well, is that 25 to 30% of leakages happen at phone connections. Your front desk is not responding, or the leads are not getting handled with urgency and with there's nobody connecting them. There are no routing protocols, and there's nobody connecting them to the right, putting them on the slot, or having the right kind of conversations to make sure that their needs are identified and then addressed. And maybe your front desk was gone for lunch. Maybe the leads called you over a weekend, or maybe they called you after hours. Do you think those leads are not worth connecting? No, yeah, if you don't have a proper system in place, if your operations are not aligned, then there are so many touch points at where you are missing out on the leads that may actually convert into not just general dentistry or hygiene cases, but even convert into like high value cases. So number one point is phone connection. Number two is consult booking. So once the phone is connected, then you need to have your team trained to identify why the lead is calling, and make sure that that lead has been given a sense of urgency into why they should come in right away for getting a dental checkup. And then those leads should immediately be booked into the next available time slot. And I was going through ADA's publication on the economy of US dental industry, and the vast majority of dentists in the US reported in 2025 in the first three quarters, because they have not published their fourth quarter report yet. They identified in the first three quarters that they were not as busy as they could be, because that meant that they had the capacity to address or look at more patients, but they just did not have the systems in place to make sure that they were addressed. The leads or the demand was not leading to the production because of the systems failure. And then when the consult is booked, the game does not stop there, because many times the consults don't show, they ghost you. And if they're ghosting you, that ghosting or no show or cancellation is costing you a lot of time, money, and effort that went into attracting those leads, talking to those leads, and then booking them in your calendar, and then reserving your chair time. So that's chair time. That's staff hours, and that's a lot of time wasted that could have otherwise been allocated for a lead that actually showed up, right? And then when the lead shows up, then the next thing is how you and your treatment coordinator are talking to them, identifying their needs, and then making sure that that lead is actually accepting the treatment plan that you have prepared for them. They're fully in. So you don't, that's a separate conversation, but these are the four main leaks. So consider the fact that if one person is entering your funnel through marketing, and say you spend an average of $100 to $200 on acquiring one patient to actually call you, pick up the phone and call you up for any kind of a dental service. And if that patient call is not addressed by or attended by your team, that's the leakage. You just lost $200, right? Imagine if that patient was eventually going to be converted into a $20,000 implant case. So that $200 that you spent on attracting the lead eventually is basically a $20,000 hit on your practice. And this is just one patient that I'm talking about. Imagine how it multiplies across locations, across and even within the same location. When you increase your marketing spend and you multiply the number of people that are coming in your funnel, imagine how the magnitude of that loss impacts your practice and your eventual EBITDA. Now, This is the real setup, and I've talked about it in detail in my other YouTube video as well. Please be sure to check it out if you're interested. And this is what I mean by the operational setup that you need to have in your practice and your group of practices in order to make sure that scaling is effortless. When you're making sure that your leaks are identified and those bottlenecks are removed, only then marketing is going to make an impact. And you need to start by ensuring that you have foundational visibility. Foundational visibility is basically your capacity. Imagine this, that you, this is like having an airplane, and then capacity or foundational visibility is how many number of seats that an airplane has and how many passengers are boarding the airplane. And what kind of passengers, which class are they boarding in. So when you look at it from the dental perspective, your foundational visibility means that the infrastructure or the ceiling that you have set for your practice. So this ceiling defines how much dentistry you can produce in a day, which eventually multiplies to weeks, months, and years. And some of the things that fall in foundational visibility include the number of operatories you have, the available hours you have, the provider coverage that you have, hygiene capacity hours that you have, and then what are the number of hours that your chair time is idle, which means that no patient is getting attended. So imagine if you have one operatory with, one operatory and you have like 10 hours in that operatory and you only have like temporary doctors working on it, and the doctor comes in for 4 hours. So you're wasting 6 hours of patient time. So you need to make sure that you have the right scheduling protocols as well. And that is the next layer. So once you have the financial visibility on the capacity or the limit which your practice or the group of practices can hold, next is to make sure that you have the scheduling capacity for it, which means that how well are you actually filling the capacity, which means that do you have the routing protocols in place? Do you have the right kind of flow? Do you have the right kind of procedure mix? What is the chair fill rate? What is the no-show rate? How urgently do you do cancellation recovery? Which means that if some patient has canceled, do you have a system in place to make sure that that slot is filled immediately? For example, you shoot out an email or a text to your patient base and tell them that, they have they can come in for a cleaning the next time at an hour where somebody else canceled, or maybe if you have somebody else who's booked out 3 or 4 months in 3 or 4 months later, you can tell them if there's a slot open. You can message them directly and have your treatment coordinator or your front desk call them up and tell them that we have the slot open and you can come in right now instead of like 3 or 4 weeks later. Also, do you have protocols in place to make sure that there is same-day dentistry happening? And same-day dentistry is the biggest advantage that you can have across your location. So make sure that you're blocking out your time and your calendar for high-value dentistry, but you should make sure that you also have blocks for same-day dentistry for people who have an urgent need, or people who are looking to get treatment done right away, or who have something so these, if you don't have protocols in place to address same-day dentistry, then you probably will be losing out on thousands of dollars, because those people who have an urgent need are eventually then go to somebody else who's already open and available to see them right away. And then you also have to make sure that you have the right routing logic in place. So the high value dentistry should go into high value blocks. Hygiene visits should have go to like hygiene blocks. So your calendar should have the right routing protocols, and then also your phone, everything from your front desk to your appointment setters, they should have the right routing protocols to make sure that the right cases are getting booked at the right time slots, and making sure and they should also make sure that the right providers are available to make sure that those cases are getting the kind of treatment that they're coming in for. Now, the third thing that you must have in place is the case acquisition engine. This is a marketing engine that a lot of people think is the only source of light for their falling or their reducing or dropping EBITDA margins. So case acquisition engine is how the high value cases are entering your system. How many booked cases are you getting? What is the cost per book case? What is the consult to acceptance rate? What is the lead to consult conversation rate? What is the case mix score? And many times where dental groups fail is that the only thing that they're getting reported on is the cost of leads acquired. And like we said before, the cost of lead only is a metric that is cosmetic metric that is used by marketing agencies, because the cost per lead metric does not tell you anything about your revenue, anything about how many cases came through, were addressed, were booked, were then attended, were presented a treatment plan, and were then accepted, and were completed and eventually turned into revenue and and cash collected. So starting with the right metrics, this engine can really help you understand where your leaks are and what are your highest sources of patient and what are your highest sources of cases that are getting accepted and completed. So if you have the right metrics in place, you should be able to tell which channels are your highest performing channels, and you can eventually then double down on them. And this case acquisition engine should also be able to tell you that which locations are helping you convert the leads that are coming in through the marketing efforts, through the marketing ad spend, and then the eventual models or the templates used in those locations can then be replicated across every other location to make sure that the variance in revenue or production per operator per day across the locations can be reduced. So if you have one location doing anywhere around, say, $2,000 per day production per operator, and the other one is doing like $800 per day production per operator, then that raises alarms, right? Because you need to have the same model. If you have a group that is working under one brand, then you have to make sure that that brand resonates across every location. So there's bound to be something wrong with the case mix, or maybe the case acquisition engine, or maybe how the cases are being converted into completed cases and cash collected. So these are the inputs and these are the KPIs that you need to see in order to make sure that you're routing your efforts in the right direction. And once the marketing and the scheduling and the foundational visibility are all aligned, then the next thing that is very important is your clinical throughput. Your clinical throughput means how efficiently your team converts time into revenue. So provider daily revenue, you need to make sure that you have visibility into how much revenue each provider is producing on a daily basis. And having visibility into provider revenue across the locations helps you understand where the providers are lacking and the kind of training that may help them improve their numbers, or the kind of support that may help them improve their numbers. For example, this may tell you whether they need another hygienist, whether they need another treatment coordinator, whether they need another CBCT, or whether they need another, they need to adjust their hours, or whether they need to have better blocks in their prime hours, that is the morning hours, that are the most productive hours. So this variance tells you where the leakages are and what needs to be aligned. Next is that what is the procedure mix? So procedure mix means that, whether you have, what is the proportion of hygiene versus cosmetic or high value cases in your practice. So if you have more hygiene cases and less cosmetic or high value cases, then naturally your EBITDA is going to be affected by that, because your high value cases eventually give you that production per operator per day that gives you the EBITDA margins that you're targeting in order to scale and have the kind of financial leverage that is needed to create better patient experience across your practices. And then it also tells you also need to understand what is the assistant to doctor ratio, because whether the doctor is getting involved in things that the assistant should be handling, whether he is getting involved in prepping the room, because that is the time that could otherwise be allocated to treating the patients and talking to them and addressing their issues. And you need to make sure that the doctor has the kind of support that he needs to make sure that his time and energy is focused on providing premium patient experience to the patients. And the last thing to notice is the turnover time, because if your turnover time, if one patient is coming in for a hygiene visit and it's taking the doctor and the team around 1 hour to get him the kind of hygiene protocols and hygiene checks that he needs, then that is definitely time wasted, because hygiene, every procedure should have a benchmark time allocated in your practice across every location. It should be standardized, because if the benchmark times are not standardized, then that is eventually also going to affect how much time is getting wasted on procedures that don't require that amount of time, right? So it affects your idle chair times. It affects your time that is otherwise maybe that could otherwise be taken for a better value procedure. And all of this combines, and it eventually impacts your financial output. So your financial output is where your EBITDA lives. This is the PPOD, or your production per operator per day. If you have everything in place, the entire infrastructure in place, and it's aligned and it's working like a machine, then your production per operator per day will not only be at an optimal level, but it will also be stable. It is not going to fluctuate every day. So what is the contribution margin? What is the operatory ROI? So if you're getting your if you're investing in one operatory, is the ROI stable across every operatory on a day-to-day basis, or does it fluctuate? And then the stability of your ROI also impacts your EBITDA predictability, and this is what scaling groups require. They need a stable predictable EBITDA. And it's important to make sure that you're aligning and fixing all the issues in the very beginning before you think about growing or scaling or increasing your proportion. Because if you don't fix these issues in the beginning, then that variance or that unpredictability or those leakages then just compound as you move on to further locations, and it just gets more complicated to address those issues. And depending on the research that I did of a lot of dental groups and a lot of studies that I read about dental groups at Scaled, this is an interesting finding. And from the model that I just shared above, the scaling dental groups are not just optimizing their marketing engine, they're also optimizing their clinical throughput, which eventually impacts their financial output and makes it more stable. What this means is that, like we talked about earlier, what this means is that a lot of dental groups are just optimizing the foundational visibility, making sure that they have the right scheduling capacity. So they're making sure that they have the right scheduling protocols in place. And because of the hype of a lot of AI-based scheduling agents, and then remote scheduling teams, and all of that is important, because that is the foundation that we talked about, right? Your entire pyramid or your group stands on this basis, on the base that you have the right capacity to take care of the kind of cases that you're after and the kind of growth that you're looking for. And then you make sure that you have the right scheduling in place to make sure that those cases or that capacity is getting booked out. And then once you have that in place, once you have the calendars and the hygienists and the treatment coordinators and the front desk working to make sure that the foundation is working coherently and foundation is working perfectly, then they also have the case acquisition engine. They have the marketing agencies. They have the marketing teams that are looking at the new campaigns to bring in new patients. But where the stalling dental groups fail is that they cut their funnel over here. They just break the pyramid, or they break their flow at the case acquisition engine. They do not look at clinical throughput. They do not look at how well those cases are getting converted into treatments. How well are those cases getting converted into cash collected? And this is where they lack, because they don't look at what is the throughput for each provider, for each member of the team. And that lack of visibility, or that lack of attention to the dollars converting into revenue and cases completed, eventually hits their financial output. And that is when their ROI and their EBITDA becomes unpredictable. The system starts to shake, and it becomes more stressful, and it really starts adding pressure and putting pressure on the operator and the owner, because they don't see, to them the calendars are full, they're fully booked out, but they don't see where the leaks are. So they don't know why the revenue is not hitting the targets, despite them being busy all day, despite the team being so frustrated and stressed out and worked out, and despite the team doing overtime. and they're just looking through sheets upon sheets and dashboards upon dashboards, and they don't exactly know where the leaks are because they are not doing it in a systematic manner, right? So what scaling dental groups do is that they make sure that they know exactly what their targets are. Then they make sure that they have the capacity to fulfill those targets. Then they make sure that they have the scheduling capacity to make sure that that foundational capacity is getting the kind of input that is required to scale. Then they make sure that they have the case acquisition engine to make sure that that scheduling capacity is getting the fuel it needs to run. And then they have the clinical throughput all planned out and integrated and aligned to make sure that that case acquisition system is getting the kind of throughput that is needed to convert the inflow or the patient inflow into financial output. And that is how they scale. And at each level, you need to have the visibility to make sure that you have the right KPIs and the right data to know exactly where the leaks are and where you need to address the bottlenecks in order to move on to the next level. Because unless and until you have the visibility and you talk about and you look at your group through the lens of data, you're not going to be able to scale without stress. It's going to be like an uphill battle every time you will think about improving your numbers, improving your margins, and improving or maybe adding more locations. And so if you feel that you're stressed out and you need to, you don't know, but you don't know where to start, then this is probably going to be the first and foremost step. Start with an audit of your intake leak process. So when the patients are coming in, so when the marketing is adding new patients, you need to start auditing where the leaks are happening. So we talked about the 4 leaks earlier, and this system is a diagnostic for dental groups under stress. It tells you where the leads are leaking, where they're stalling, where they're misrouted, and where they're silently killing the growth. Because even if your calendar is getting booked out, but 8 out of those 12 bookings are not showing up, then you definitely have a problem to address. And let this be the first audit and the main KPI to look at this point of the audit is your consult to show rate. And here's a simple 4-step process that I'm going to help you with. Obviously, this is going to give you a good head start. So start with leak detection. Detection at a point where the demand enters the system. This is where your marketing is adding more patients. So if you're talking about having more high value cases, because we talk about time and time again how the case mix or the provider, the case mix and the procedure mix helps you improve your PPOD, which eventually impacts your EBITDA, then you need to have a leak detection process where your demand is entering the system. You need to ask, are all implant inquiries tagged correctly? So do Google Ads calls route differently from the web forms? Are referrals treated as high value leads? So all of these are questions that you need to ask yourself, because if you have a leak happening here where the demand is entering the system and you don't know where the leads are coming in from, you don't have any process to route them, tag them, to make sure that you know exactly which paid channel generated which leads and how much money did it require you to spend on your organic ranking versus your paid ranking versus your referral network versus your community outreach programs, etc., versus your maybe membership plans. You need to make sure that you have all of those leads coming in and routed and tagged with the right source in order to make sure that you understand which source is generating the most amount of revenue for you, because this is such a crucial information. If you don't know this, if you don't know your attributions, then you're not going to be able to see how you can double down on your spend or the channel by location. And this also has to be done by the location, by the provider. And we're going to talk about it next. So if you are not detecting these leaks, the leak number one, that is where the demand enters the system, then you will see that your calls are hitting front desk instead of trained coordinators. If you don't have the right leads, for example, your implant cases, because they're high value cases, they need to go to properly trained treatment coordinators who know how to handle high value cases, who know how to have the kind of relationship building or the psychological connection with the patients who are, because high value cases are not an instant purchase. They're not an impulse purchase, right? They require significant decision. They require planning. They require finances. So your treatment coordinator must be trained to understand how to have the kind of conversation, because high value cases, the patients have three questions in their mind. How much does it cost? How long is it going to take, and what impact is it going to have on the condition that they have? Because when they're coming in, for example, an implant, they are not looking for a quick 5-minute cleaning, right? They're coming in because they have probably eating issues. They have they want to address their confidence, their aesthetics, and you need to have a friendly conversation, relationship building conversation with the patients to understand what their underlying cause is, to inquire about high value cases, because they're not just going to pick up the phone and say, I need an implant. They're going to pick up the phone and tell you that I have this issue and I want a permanent solution for it, right? And then you need to also understand where do they, what are their constraints to getting those issues fixed, whether it's the financial constraint, whether it is the time, whether it is the pain, whether it is their lack of understanding about the procedure. And based on the what you identify about the patients, you will be at a better position to pitch the treatment to them, or to tell them about or educate them about the treatment. And once you your treatment coordinators take a stance of educating patients instead of selling them the treatments, only then you will see that you have not just a long-term patient retention, but you also have better case acceptance and case conversion. So if you're not detecting the leak number one, you're going to face calls, for example, high value cases that are coming in or calling up, and they're hitting front desk instead of trained coordinators, and immediately that's a leak, right? If there's no attribution tracking, you will not know which channels are producing more. You will blindly spend money on channels, on funnels, on locations that are right now not in a position to give you the kind of return on your revenue, and probably are underperforming compared to your other channels. If you're getting missed calls after hours, if you're not detecting it, then you don't know that this is causing a major leak in your high value cases and affecting your PPOD, and you need to have this fixed by maybe having like virtual coordinators, or maybe have like AI coordinators in place that are able to at least capture that demand, so that when your trained treatment coordinator is in office and available, they can eventually then go back and talk to them. Because if nobody is addressing or answering the phone, then that is a leak that has costed you thousands of dollars already. And then if the form submissions are sitting unworked, for example, somebody is submitting a form through your website and nobody is checking it, then again, these are opportunities that can be gold mine for your practice, right? Okay, so once you have the demand entering system audited, the next is to identify the leak number two, that is how demand moves through the system. And once you know exactly which channels the leads are coming in and where they're hitting, then you need to see who handles the leads first. You need to see which leads from your procedure mix are hitting which member of your team, and are they trained to handle them. You need to see what happens during lunch or overflow. If there's if it's rush hour, if it's busy hour in the practice, then how are you making sure that the calls are not getting unattended, right? If they're not getting like overlapped by people who are already on the phone, and how will you make sure that every patient calling in is at least getting an answer and getting routed to the right person? Then you also need to make sure that do you have a backup owner or an escalation mechanism for if a lead is not getting handled properly, or if a lead is not getting answered, do you have an escalation mechanism to make sure that you're addressing that solution right away? If not, then you need to make sure that you have that in place. Otherwise, your detection leak number 2 is going to lead to lack of overflow routing is going to be the single point of failure. There will be leads bouncing between offices because one office is not trained and prepared to handle those leads, and there will be no accountability. There will be a lot of finger pointing because that revenue is eventually show up in your numbers end of the month, and nobody will know where the leak happened. Leak number 3 that you need to audit is to see what actually happens when a human picks up. So are the scripts standardized by visit type? Are all high-value procedures getting treated the same way? Are they greeted the same way? Is the conversation flowing in the same direction? Is the same kind of connection being built by every coordinator who's talking to a high-value case coming in, or even a hygiene case? Because end of the day, it's your practice's reputation, it's your brand that is at stake. So standardization is very important and goes a long way. And are the objections handled correctly? So it's important to not just have those objections mentioned on your online sources, for example, your website, blog posts, wherever you're present socially and online and digitally, but you also need to make sure that the same scripts are being translated and given to the entire team and are being translated into the conversation and the communication that is being done with the patients as well directly. And is anyone reviewing call quality? Because you need to make sure that your people on the phone are representing your brand, like I said before, correctly. And the scripts really help. Not just it does not have to be robotic. It has to be something that feels like it's coming from a human and not an AI bot, right? And if these leaks are not identified and not audited, then they lead to inconsistent scripts, which lead to inconsistent scripts because there's no quality assurance being done, there's no quality control being done, and it leads to poor close rates. Because when your leads are handled differently, so even if one patient is calling twice and getting handled differently by 2 different team members, then that is definitely going to impact him and they will flake, right? So if they felt the connection with the first one and not the second one, they're not going to return. And if you're not monitoring it, there's lack of accountability. So if it doesn't show in the numbers, then those numbers are eventually going to be blamed on every person who was part of the process instead of the system or the process where the leak is actually happening. Now, the leak number 4 that you need to audit is what the business can actually see. Can leadership see conversion rates? Are you looking at numbers that are coming in, for example, the cost per lead, or are you actually looking at cost per case converted and cost per case completed? Do you know which channels are producing better case completions? Which channels are bringing in patients who are converting into cases and accepting the treatment and bringing in more collections? Or do you know which locations are performing better? Can you see the cost per implant case? Do you have any way of reducing that and or increasing the number of cases based on the cost? Because if you know that you have a $100 implant case coming in and that's converting into $20,000 case completions through, for example, Facebook ads, then you can double down on that, right? And if you don't know what's your case cost per implant case completed, then you're going to be increasing the spend across every channel, every marketing channel, every referral channel, every community event, and that eventually will have more leakages in it because it's not a system that has proven, shown results over the years, right? So that is important. And if you don't detect these leaks, then you have static systems, you have no continuous optimization, and you have the same problem repeating every quarter with everyone blaming each other. So your intake leak map shows your lost calls, your missed bookings, your underperforming coordinators, your wasted ad spend, your capacity mismatches, and your poor attribution. If you can just start with this simple audit and have a leak map that is showing you these numbers on a weekly or a monthly basis, then you're going to have better visibility into where the leaks have to be addressed, and the revenue and the EBITDA can be improved. Now, this is a simple KPI scorecard that is going to help you with your leak auditing. And you need to have some data that you can implement and start monitoring at the coordinator level, office level, and then at the group level. And make sure that the numbers for each of these levels are consistent across every location. So, for example, at the coordinator level, you should have your answer rate, that is the percentage of calls answered, the average response time, how quickly are your coordinators responding to the leads coming in, the consults that are booked per day, how many consults are booked per day in one location, and what is the variance across every location, the show rate for the book consults, the implant cases started from the bookings, and then the conversion by channel. And then at the office level, you need to know how many qualified implant inquiries were received, how many consults were completed, what was the case acceptance rate, what was the implant revenue per month, and then what was the revenue per booked consult, and the cost per booked case, that is a marketing spend that led to implant case starts. At the group level, you need to understand which offices turn leads into revenue best, which channel produces the best cost per book case, and you need to understand how to eliminate wasteful, underperforming lead sources. So eventually, if you have these KPIs and you're monitoring them through a dashboard or whatever source you have on a regular basis, you should be able to answer the following things. Which office turns leads into revenue best? You will be able to identify top performing locations that convert leads into consults and revenue, diagnose underperforming offices early, and then make data-driven staffing, training, and operational investments. You will also be able to see which channels produce the best cost per booked case. You will be able to measure true case level ROI of each channel, focus budget on the highest ROI marketing channels, and then eliminate wasteful, underperforming lead sources. And then you will also be able to see where to reallocate budget and where to cut the cost. So redirecting spending to top performing offices and channels that is going to help you bring in better ROI. You will be able to reduce spend on underperforming campaigns and processes, and then make better data-driven financial decisions. And all of this leads to, turning your dental group into and moving it from a stalling dental group to a scaling dental group. So instead of being reactive, you need to have predictable scale through systems in place. Once you hit the system, it gets very difficult to address the bottlenecks. Turning your dental groups into operating systems that produce predictable growth, EBITDA, and strategic freedom is what is going to help you scale beyond the limits that you've set for yourself. So a reactive practice is firefighting daily, has unpredictable production because they don't know where the leaks are. They have provider stress because every provider thinks that they need to be putting in more effort. They have margin leakages because the costs are rising, but the production per operator per day is either stagnant or declining because you're not getting high value cases in prime hours or in the blocked schedules. You're getting more hygiene cases, right? So your margins are very thin. You have disconnected systems. So you have the data coming in, but you don't know where the leaks are happening. And then you have leadership stack and ops. So a lot of people are blaming the system and the processes without knowing exactly where to point their fingers and fix it. Once you have the operating system installed, you have a unified audit layer. You know exactly what to monitor, where to address the leakages, and you know the signal versus control dashboard. So you know exactly where the leakages are happening and how soon do you need to address them. And then you have bottleneck visibility. So for example, if it's a capacity issue, you need to, the operating system is going to tell you that you need to have more operators or more equipment in place, or you need like better facility, or have like some waiting room protocols to make sure that the patients are staying. If you have automations and workflows, you have performance tracking, you have decision intelligence, because you have the data to make sure that you are seeing the value that is being produced by your offices, and also the kind of investment that you're putting in, how is that translating into the throughput and eventually revenue. And having the operating system installed with one unified audit layer, with the dashboard that shows how those audits are, what leakages those audits are identifying, and which bottlenecks need to be addressed in order of priority. That is, which ones are the most urgent ones, which ones can be put on a priority number 2 and which ones can be addressed like later. And unless you have that visibility, you will not be able to address it. Automations and workflows and help you see exactly how you can replicate your system across your locations, across your team members. So for example, if you have like leakages happening at phone calls and you have a script that is in place for every treatment coordinator that is addressing or attending high value cases, then you can have a system in place to make sure that every new treatment coordinator or existing one is getting an audit of their calls and is getting a report of where they lagged and how they can improve the next time, and is getting like maybe a link to a digital training that they can go through to make sure that they're using the same language that is being used by the top performing treatment coordinators across a top performing office. And this also helps you make sure that you have performance tracking in place. So if you have the benchmarks, then you know how to evaluate every treatment coordinator across every location. If you don't have the benchmark, don't have the data, then you don't know who's performing better, and you don't know how much improvement is required by other members of the team. And this entire protocol and this entire system helps you with predictable scale. You have growth that is predictable because you know that every treatment coordinator is going to address the high value cases the same way. And say, for example, they require like 30 minutes on the phone with the treatment with the patient who's coming in for high value dentistry, then you can say that, for example, if we need like 10 conversations in a day for implant cases, we need maybe 2 treatment coordinators, handling 5 calls each day. And these are the numbers that let you understand that, if you want to scale beyond that, beyond 5, 10, 15 locations, and you want to add like 10, 15, 20 more implant cases, then if one treatment coordinator can handle 5 cases, then you need at least 4 more, to make sure that you are your group is getting 20 different implant cases handled on a daily basis. This lowers stress because you know that you're in control. You know that you don't need interventions. You know that if there's a bottleneck and you come up with a solution to address that bottleneck and that solution can then be digitized and turned into an automated workflow that is then disseminated across your group, across your entire team, to make sure that they're using it to the best of their knowledge to improve their performance. And this predictability leads to cleaner EBITDA, because if you have the predictability, you don't have the revenue leaks that are unaddressed, then you have the margins that let you scale beyond the numbers that you are aiming for. And you can scale faster, there's less firefighting, and there's strategic leadership. So I hope you were able to get some value out of this video. And if any of this resonated with you, let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.